Ahead of the big football game this Sunday, you know which one I'm talking about. Artist Bad Bunny is facing heat from conservatives over his comments at the Grammy Awards.
Bad Bunny received a standing ovation, not just for breaking records with the first Spanish language album of the year win, but also for showing solidarity toward immigrants living in America. Let's listen.
Hey, thanks to God, I'm gonna say, eyes out. We're not savage, we're not animals, we're not aliens, we are humans, and we are Americans.
Conservative influencer Emily Austin said in an interview with the Wall Street Journal, America gave him such a great opportunity to really amplify his career on another level. He took that platform that he's built here and has now completely turned into bashing this country. Ice out is not realistic, and it is reckless and dangerous. White House spokeswoman Abigail Jackson told the Wall Street Journal in a statement, federal law enforcement officers work heroically to protect American communities, and anyone pointing the finger at law enforcement instead of the actual criminals is simply doing the bidding of criminal illegal aliens.
Even President Trump has weighed in on the big game's halftime pick, saying in October, quote, I don't know who he is. I don't know why they're doing it. It's like crazy. And then they blame it on some promoter that they hired to pick up entertainment.
Turning Point USA, the group founded by the late conservative activist Charlie Kirk, announced that it is hosting a counter program to the halftime show that will include artists like Kid Rock, Lee Brice, and Brantley Gilbert.
Meanwhile, there are some mixed feelings among NFL players about Bad Bunny's upcoming halftime performance. A survey conducted by The Athletic of anonymous NFL players showed that 58.6% of the players said that they like the NFL selection of Bad Bunny for the halftime show, while 41.4% said no. One NFC defensive player told The Athletic, quote, I've heard his music, obviously, but I don't speak Spanish, so I'm not a big fan. But I do think it's cool to have him because America is based on diversity. America was built on immigration. So I feel like having him just furthers that American dream. I like it. I like the choice.
Another NFC offensive player said, I don't even know who Bad Bunny is. I always think it should be an American. I think they're trying too hard with this international stuff. Now, obviously, he's from Puerto Rico.
I was going to say, yeah.
The Athletic, they put a little postscript note in there in the story to note that he is technically an American citizen. That NFL player had it wrong, but
yeah, it's that thing though becomes it's so frequently cited with Puerto Rico and the influencer we quoted earlier, you know, about him coming to America and all that. Like Puerto Ricans are American citizens, so you know.
He also sort of implied that he was like part of the immigrant community, which further blurred the lines. I think
possibly,
it's all confusing.
Yeah, it is. It is all confusing. I mean, I think we were talking earlier about the Olympics, and in that discussion we mentioned the fact that everything has become divisive now, or the vast majority of things. Now, Bad Bunny's hugely successful artist. I looked up his chart positions before, and he has like 4 #1 albums in a row. So that obviously demonstrates a breadth of appeal. That being said, he has made his political views on the immigration question, on the question of ICE, very, very clear. A lot of people are very sympathetic with those views. A lot of people dislike those views a lot. It's clearly going to be a political flashpoint, and people who don't like it will presumably turn over to the TPUSA Kid Rock-led extravaganza.
Hey, I actually do love Kid Rock, and I like the artists that the Turning Point got. But Brantley Gilbert and Lee Brice have not had a big hit in a long time. Now, they also have Gabby Barrett, who is a sort of up-and-coming like female country star. She's had a couple of #1 hits on the country music chart, so I am excited to see her. But it's always the case with these conservative counter-programming things that we get like the bottom of the barrel when it comes to artists. Like, we're not going to get Beyonce or some mega star coming out to perform, which is a shame. But I think the other part of this that kind of gets overlooked in terms of the political nature of the halftime show is not just his stance on ICE and immigration and politics generally, but some other conservatives have been upset over his advocacy for queer activism. So he, I believe, said that he was thinking about wearing a dress during the halftime show because he wants to show support to those communities. And conservatives, and look, I'm one of them, I don't like seeing a dude in a dress. It just is what it is. You're allowed to do it. There's
free country,
I know.
Free country.
No, you're allowed to do it. And then I look at it and I go, that's weird. And then I move on. But
yeah, I mean, if he wants to wear a dress, I'm fine with him wearing a dress. But it's just so many of these. I mean, it's just such a splintering of what is considered acceptable, admirable, unadmirable, all of that stuff. And the NFL obviously is getting increasingly dragged into these debates and has been getting dragged into these debates for years now. There was the Take a Knee protest, which I was completely fine with, and Trump certainly wasn't, and was calling for people, I can't remember, calling for players to be fired or something over that. Right. So there's going to be, political uproar about this. It's a bit of a shame. I mean, the big game, as we are apparently referring to it, is, always the most watched moment on American television during that year, because it has the capacity to bring so many people together. It's going to be there's going to be political controversy without any question.
I think this is the first year too that people realize that it was Jay-Z's production company that is behind the pick for the halftime show. And so I wonder if Roger Goodell, the NFL commissioner, after this year might change that arrangement, because I have a lot of complaints about Roger Goodell, as any NFL fan does, and the people watching know what I'm talking about. But I don't think he anticipated or wanted this level of controversy surrounding the halftime show. And so I'm curious if they will either find someone different, or maybe they'll put together some kind of committee that selects future halftime shows. Because it is kind of weird to have it basically run by one artist and producer.
Yeah. I mean, I don't really. Yeah, I wouldn't really dispute that point. And I mean, obviously it's a choice that is made, in a conscious fashion. Like I say, I'm all in favor of Bad Bunny doing it, but I understand that lots of people will have a massive objection. It is, I agree, odd to have that one person, and then to have the kind of counter programming. I mean, it is a free country. TPUSA can do what they wish, but that then, it seems to me, intensifies the political schism, because they're very explicitly saying, if you don't like Bad Bunny and you don't like what he thinks of ICE, and perhaps you don't like his views on LGBTQ issues, then come and have a more conservative musical celebration with Kid Rock instead. Whatever. I don't know. Just, you mentioned about, country artists and so on. This is a side tangent, but as someone who had associated at least contemporary country music with a more conservative view, it's been interesting to me that in recent years you have had people, some described as country, some described as Americana, of a more progressive view.
Right. Jason Isbell, Sturgill Simpson, Maren Morris. There's been a lot more.
Tyler Childers.
Yes,
yeah.
Definitely. And it's interesting, there's been a lot of infighting in the country music scene because of that. And some people, like Maren Morris, outrightly leaving country music because she was frustrated from the backlash that she got from fans for expressing political views. And a lot of them just don't speak on politics at all if they can help it, because the fan base is overwhelmingly pretty conservative. Yeah. So that is another sort of interesting dynamic. I mean, one thing I've noticed with country music, I've written about this before, is that a lot of the journalists who cover country music are liberal, because most journalists are liberal. I mean, that's just the reality of the situation. And they tend to elevate the artists who do express liberal political views, even if they're not as popular on the country music charts. Now, obviously, Tyler Childers is an exception to this. He's immensely successnumber
Sure.
But one of them was Mickey Guyton. She's a black country music artist. She's been around for over a decade now, and she's had a number of mildly successful hits, but hasn't had ever a huge breakout moment in her career. And the arts media and even New York Times and Rolling Stone have made her out to be like the next big thing from country music, and it's all framed around her political advocacy.
Yeah.
But in terms of popularity and the success of her music, it's not really there. And so there is oftentimes, in my opinion, a concerted effort to try to highlight this political shift in the country music scene in a way that intensifies this
possibly
division.
Yeah, and it's interesting, Robbie and I were talking earlier this week about something else cultural. The Melania documentary, and how it had been written and then its ticket sales. I actually think that for all the complaints about liberal political journalism, I actually think arts journalism is more liberal in its general outlook, because I think that's just who is naturally drawn to,
Yeah.
to typically writing about those things. So, I mean, I would assume that does apply to country music as well as to many
I'm
of
sure.
these other
One final
debates.
point on this this big game and
Yes.
the halftime show. I do think that the NFL was probably not thinking about this in as much political terms as they were international terms. The league has obviously been making efforts to develop more of an international presence. There were multiple opening games in Europe this year. One of the opening games next year is going to be in Australia. So they are trying to expand their presence worldwide. There were some games in Brazil. I think that the selection of Bad Bunny was probably done more so to try to appeal to a global audience than it was to just anger the Americans.
That makes sense, and it may well work as well.
We'll
So
see.
we
All
shall
right.
see.
We have a lot more to talk about on Rising. Stick with us.